The crystal spires of the Draconian Empire stretched toward three purple suns, their surfaces gleaming with the reflected light of advanced technology that had dominated this sector of the galaxy for over 10,000 years. Within the highest tower of the Imperial Palace, Princess Zarati HYSS lay writhing in agony on a bed carved from a single piece of starfire diamond. Her magnificent scales, once the color of molten gold with edges of deep crimson, had dulled to an ashen bronze. The great dragon princess, heir to the throne that ruled over 47 star systems, was dying. Emperor Vextaron paced the length of his daughter's chamber, his massive draconic form casting shifting shadows across the walls. Each of his steps sent tremors through the palace structure, despite the advanced gravity dampeners. His own scales, a deep obsidian black shot through with veins of silver, rippled with barely contained rage and desperation. For 3 months, the greatest medical minds in the Empire had examined his daughter. Physicians from the crystal and healers of Andromeda, bioengineers from the synthetic worlds, even the mysterious psion surgeons from the Void Rim had all declared her condition beyond their understanding. "Father," Zarati HYSS whispered, her voice barely audible above the hum of the life support systems surrounding her bed. "The pain grows worse each day. Perhaps it is time to accept what the medics have told us." The Emperor's eyes blazed with inner fire. "Never! I will not lose you as I lost your mother. There must be someone, somewhere in this vast empire, who can help you." Dr. Velamara, the Empire's chief medical advisor, cleared her throat nervously. Her scaled hands trembled as she consulted her data pad for the 100th time that day. "Your Imperial Majesty, we have exhausted every avenue of treatment. The princess's condition appears to be some form of neural degradation, but it follows no pattern we have ever encountered. Her brain chemistry is slowly changing, causing intense pain and gradual system failure. Without understanding the cause, we cannot devise a cure." In the corner of the chamber, almost invisible in his simple brown servant's robes, stood Marcus Chen. The human had been assigned to the princess's service only 6 months earlier, part of a diplomatic exchange program between the Draconian Empire and the small human territories on the Galactic Rim. Most of the Imperial Court barely noticed his presence, considering humans to be a primitive species barely worth acknowledgement. Marcus was 32 years old, average height for his species, with dark hair and quiet brown eyes that seemed to notice everything while drawing no attention to themselves. As the Emperor continued his furious pacing and the medical team argued amongst themselves about treatment options they had already attempted dozens of times, Marcus quietly observed the princess. He had been watching her condition deteriorate day by day, noting symptoms that the advanced alien physicians seemed to overlook or dismiss as irrelevant. While they focused on their sophisticated scans and biomolecular analyses, Marcus simply watched and listened. "The princess's pain cycles seem to follow a specific pattern," Marcus said quietly, his voice carrying clearly in the sudden silence that followed. Every scaled head in the room turned toward him with expressions ranging from surprise to outright hostility. Dr. Velamara's lip curled in disdain. "Servant, you forget your place. This is a matter for qualified medical professionals, not domestic help." Emperor Vextaron raised a massive clawed hand for silence. Despite his desperation, he found himself curious about what the small human had observed. "Continue, Marcus. What pattern do you speak of?" Marcus stepped forward slightly, his posture respectful but his voice steady. "Every night, precisely 4 hours after the princess retires to her chambers, she begins experiencing the most severe pain episodes. The attacks last for exactly 2 hours and 47 minutes, then gradually subside until morning. During the day, her pain levels fluctuate but never reach the nighttime intensity. This pattern has been consistent for the past month." The medical team exchanged glances. Dr. Velamara consulted her charts rapidly. "While the servant's observations about timing may be accurate, correlation does not imply causation. The princess's circadian rhythms are obviously disrupted by her condition. But what if the timing isn't a symptom?" Marcus asked quietly. "What if it's a clue to the cause?" The Emperor's massive head tilted slightly, his ancient eyes studying the human with new interest. "Explain your reasoning, Marcus." "Your Majesty, in human medicine, we have learned that sometimes the most sophisticated technology can miss the simplest explanations. When healers become focused on complex theories, they sometimes overlook basic environmental factors. I have been wondering if perhaps something in the princess's immediate environment might be triggering her condition." Dr. Velamara's scales flushed with indignation. Are you suggesting that our medical scans, which can detect molecular level anomalies, have somehow missed an environmental factor? Our instruments are 1,000 times more sensitive than anything your primitive species possesses. Marcus bowed his head respectfully. I mean no disrespect to your expertise, Doctor. But, sometimes human intuition and simple observation can complement advanced technology. May I ask when the princess's chambers were last thoroughly cleaned and inspected? The princess's chambers are cleaned daily by the most advanced sterilization systems, the doctor replied haughtily. Every surface is molecularly scrubbed and analyzed for contaminants. But, has anyone physically examined the spaces that the cleaning systems might not reach? Marcus persisted. Sometimes harmful substances can accumulate in areas that automated systems overlook. Princess Zara THYSS lifted her head slightly from her pillow, her dulled golden eyes focusing on Marcus with effort. The human raises an interesting point, Father. What harm could come from a thorough manual inspection of my chambers? The Emperor considered this for a long moment. His daughter's condition had shown no improvement despite months of the most advanced medical treatment available in the known galaxy. Perhaps it was time to consider unconventional approaches, even if they came from a species his people considered technologically inferior. Very well, the Emperor rumbled. Marcus, you have permission to conduct a complete inspection of the princess's chambers. Dr. Velamara, you will provide him with any scanning equipment he requires and full access to all areas of the room. The doctor's scales rippled with barely contained fury, but she dared not argue with her emperor's direct command. As you wish, Your Majesty. Though I maintain that this is a waste of valuable time that could be spent on legitimate medical research. As the medical team filed out of the chamber, still muttering among themselves about the foolishness of consulting primitive humans on advanced medical matters, Marcus approached the princess's bed. Her condition was clearly worse than when he had first been assigned to her service. The vibrant, commanding presence that had once filled these chambers had been reduced to a shadow of its former self. Your Highness, Marcus said softly, I know this may seem like false hope, but I truly believe we may find answers if we look in the right places. Sometimes the solution to a complex problem can be surprisingly simple. Zara THYSS managed a weak smile. You speak with such confidence for a member of a species my people consider barely civilized. Tell me, Marcus, what gives you such faith in your primitive human methods? Marcus pulled a chair closer to her bed and sat down, his posture respectful but relaxed. Your Highness, my people may not have advanced medical technology like yours, but we have learned to be observant. We notice patterns and connections that sophisticated instruments might miss. In my previous life, before I came to serve in your palace, I worked as a maintenance engineer on human space stations. I learned that sometimes the most complex system failures are caused by the simplest problems, things that high-tech sensors overlook because they're programmed to look for complicated malfunctions. The princess studied his face intently. Despite her pain and weakness, her intelligence remained sharp. You believe my condition might be caused by something mundane that our medical technology has overlooked? I think it's possible, Your Highness. The timing of your pain episodes is too precise to be random. Something is triggering them at specific intervals. If I can identify what changes in your environment during those critical hours, we might find our answer. Over the next several hours, Marcus began his systematic inspection of the princess's chambers. The room was vast by human standards, with soaring ceilings and walls lined with precious metals and crystalline decorations. Advanced climate control systems maintained perfect temperature and atmospheric composition. The cleaning systems were indeed sophisticated, utilizing molecular-level sterilization fields that activated multiple times throughout the day. Marcus started with the obvious locations, checking for any substances or materials that might release toxins or cause allergic reactions. He examined the princess's bedding, the air circulation systems, the food preparation areas, and every piece of furniture. Dr. Velamara observed his efforts with obvious skepticism, occasionally pointing out that their medical scanners had already analyzed every surface he was investigating. As the day progressed, Marcus expanded his search to less obvious areas. He crawled along the base of the walls, checking for hidden vents or cracks where contaminants might accumulate. He examined the intricate carvings in the chamber's decorative elements, looking for any signs of biological growth or chemical residue. The princess watched his efforts with growing interest, occasionally offering suggestions about areas he might investigate. Marcus, she said during one of his brief rest periods, I must admit I am impressed by your thoroughness. You seem to genuinely care about finding answers. Marcus looked up from where he had been examining the joints in the chamber's crystal windows. Your Highness, every sapient being deserves to live without suffering. Your people may consider humans primitive, but we understand the value of life and the importance of helping those in need. As evening approached and the time for the princess's nightly pain episode drew near, Marcus had covered almost every visible surface in the chamber without finding anything suspicious. Dr. Velamara was barely concealing her satisfaction at his apparent failure. Perhaps now the human will admit that his primitive methods are inadequate for addressing advanced medical conditions, she commented to her assistants. But Marcus was not ready to give up. He had noticed something during his inspection that bothered him, though he couldn't quite put his finger on what it was. As the princess's bedtime approached, he positioned himself where he could observe the room's automated systems as they shifted into night mode. The chamber's lighting gradually dimmed to simulate a natural night cycle. Climate control systems adjusted temperature and humidity to optimal sleeping conditions. Security fields strengthened around the perimeter. And then, Marcus noticed something that made him pause. Your Highness, he said carefully, I'd like to examine the area directly beneath your bed. Would it be possible for you to move to the chair for a few minutes? Princess Zara Thys, despite her weakness, managed to relocate with Marcus's assistance. Her massive draconic form had difficulty fitting into the furniture designed for her humanoid shape when not in full dragon mode, but she managed to settle uncomfortably in the oversized chair. Marcus knelt down and peered beneath the starfire diamond bed. The space underneath was shrouded in shadows that the room's automated cleaning systems couldn't penetrate effectively. Using a small hand light borrowed from the medical team's equipment, Marcus began a careful visual inspection of the area. At first, he saw nothing unusual. The floor beneath the bed was clean, and the support structure appeared normal. But, as he shifted his light to different angles, something caught his attention. There, growing in the small gap between the bed's base and the wall, was what appeared to be a cluster of small, phosphorescent fungi. The growth was tiny, barely visible unless viewed from the correct angle. It glowed with a faint blue-green light that would be completely invisible during the day but became apparent in the darkness beneath the bed. Marcus estimated that the fungal colony had been growing for several months, fed by moisture condensation in the narrow space and protected from the room's cleaning systems by its hidden location. Dr. Velamara, Marcus called out, his voice carefully controlled despite his excitement. Could you please bring your bioscanner over here? I believe I may have found something significant. The doctor approached with obvious reluctance, her scanning equipment in hand. What could you possibly have discovered that our advanced systems missed? Marcus pointed to the phosphorescent growth. There appears to be some form of biological organism growing beneath the princess's bed. Can your scanner identify what it is? Dr. Velamara's expression changed from skepticism to alarm as her scanner began registering readings. The device's display showed complex molecular signatures that made her scales shift color with concern. By the 7 moons, she whispered. This organism is producing psychoactive spores. According to these readings, it releases them in concentrated bursts during the dark cycle when bioluminescence is most active. Marcus felt a surge of both relief and concern. Could these spores be causing the princess's neurological symptoms? The doctor's hands moved rapidly over her scanner's controls, cross-referencing the fungal signatures with databases of known toxins and allergens. The molecular structure of these spores shows remarkable similarity to compounds that affect draconian brain chemistry. In high concentrations, they could certainly cause the type of neural inflammation we've been observing in the princess. Princess Zara Thys, despite her pain and weakness, had been listening intently to their conversation. Are you saying that this small growth has been slowly poisoning me for months? Dr. Velamara's expression was a mixture of professional excitement and personal embarrassment. It appears that way, Your Highness. These spores would be completely undetectable during our normal scans because they disperse so rapidly in the air circulation system. Only by discovering the source during its active period could we have identified the problem. Marcus stood up slowly, brushing dust from his robes. The timing makes sense now. The fungus becomes active during the dark cycle, releasing concentrated spores directly into the area where Your Highness sleeps. The spores cause immediate neurological distress, then gradually clear from your system during the day as the colony becomes dormant. The Emperor, who had been listening from the doorway, stepped into the chamber. His massive presence filled the room as he surveyed the tiny fungal growth that had been slowly killing his daughter. Such a small thing, he rumbled, his voice containing both wonder and rage. All our advanced medicine, all our sophisticated technology, and the solution was discovered by careful observation and simple human curiosity. Dr. Vellamara was already preparing specialized equipment to safely remove the fungal colony. We should be able to eliminate this growth completely within a few hours. Once the spore source is removed and the princess's system clears the remaining toxins, her recovery should be rapid. As the medical team worked to remove the hidden threat, Marcus found himself reflecting on the events of the day. The princess's condition had been a mystery to the most advanced medical minds in the galaxy, yet the solution had been hiding in plain sight. Sometimes the most sophisticated technology could miss the simplest answers. Marcus, Princess Zarati HYSS called to him as the medical team continued their work. I owe you a debt that I can never fully repay. You have given me back my life when all others had given up hope. Marcus bowed respectfully. Your Highness, I was simply doing my duty as your servant. Any being deserves help when they are suffering. The princess studied him with new interest, her golden eyes brighter than they had been in months. Tell me, Marcus, what made you think to look where others had not? Marcus considered her question carefully. Your Highness, human engineering has taught me that the most persistent problems often have the simplest causes. When complex systems fail, we first check the basic environmental factors before assuming sophisticated malfunctions. The pattern of your symptoms suggested an external trigger that activated on a precise schedule. In my experience, only biological or mechanical systems operate with such consistent timing. As the night progressed and the fungal colony was completely removed from beneath the bed, Princess Zarati HYSS experienced the first pain-free hours she had known in months. The relief on her face was evident to everyone in the chamber, and even Dr. Vellamara had to admit that the humans' unconventional approach had succeeded where their advanced medicine had failed. Emperor Vextaron approached Marcus as dawn broke over the crystal spires of the capital city. You have done something today that I will not forget, human. You have shown wisdom where others showed only knowledge, observation where others showed only assumption. I am in your debt. Marcus inclined his head respectfully. Your Majesty, I ask for nothing more than the opportunity to continue serving your Highness as she recovers her strength. The Emperor's ancient eyes studied the small human for a long moment. There was clearly more to this servant than his modest appearance suggested. Perhaps it was time the Draconian Empire reconsidered its assumptions about the primitive species from the Galactic Rim. As the medical team packed up their equipment and prepared to leave, Dr. Vellamara paused beside Marcus. Her expression was complex, combining professional respect with personal chagrin. I must admit, she said quietly, that your methods have taught me something valuable today. Perhaps we have become too dependent on our technology and forgotten the importance of simple observation. I would be interested in learning more about human diagnostic techniques. Marcus smiled modestly. Doctor, I would be honored to share what little knowledge I possess. Perhaps by combining your advanced technology with human observational methods, we could develop even more effective approaches to medical mysteries. Princess Zarati HYSS, now sitting up in her bed for the first time in weeks, watched this exchange with growing fascination. The quiet human servant who had solved her impossible medical condition was clearly more than he appeared to be. As her strength returned and her mind cleared of the toxic influence that had been slowly destroying her, she found herself wondering what other surprises this remarkable human might reveal. 3 weeks after the discovery of the hidden fungus, Princess Zarati HYSS had made a remarkable recovery. Her golden scales had regained their lustrous shine, and the crimson edges now gleamed with renewed vitality. She moved through the palace corridors with the grace and power that had once made her the pride of the Draconian Empire. Yet something fundamental had changed in her perspective during those months of suffering and helplessness. Marcus continued his duties as her personal servant, but their relationship had evolved into something unprecedented in the rigid hierarchy of Draconian society. The princess found herself genuinely curious about human culture and capabilities, often engaging Marcus in conversations that lasted for hours. She discovered that his background was far more complex than his humble servant's role suggested. Tell me more about your previous work, Princess Zarati HYSS said one morning as Marcus helped arrange her daily schedule. You mentioned being a maintenance engineer on human space stations. What exactly did that involve? Marcus paused in his organization of her correspondence, considering how to explain his background without seeming to boast. Your Highness, human space stations are much smaller and more primitive than draconian installations, but they face unique challenges. We must maintain life support systems with limited resources and simple technology. This requires constant vigilance and creative problem solving. Describe a typical problem you might have encountered, she pressed, settling into her favorite chair near the chamber's great window that overlooked the capital city. Marcus set down the data tablets he had been organizing and turned to face her. Well, Your Highness, I remember one incident where our station began experiencing random power fluctuations that threatened life support. Our diagnostic computers couldn't identify the cause because the failures seemed completely random. The engineering team spent days running system analyses and replacing components, but nothing worked. The princess leaned forward with interest. How did you solve it? I spent several shifts just walking through the station's service corridors, listening and observing. Eventually, I noticed that the power failures seemed to coincide with the station's rotation cycle, bringing a particular section into direct sunlight. It turned out that thermal expansion was causing a loose connection in a junction box that our automated systems couldn't detect because it only failed under specific temperature conditions. Princess Zara Thyss smiled, her expression thoughtful. A simple environmental factor that sophisticated technology missed, just like with my condition. Is this approach common among human engineers? Observational troubleshooting is part of our basic training, Marcus replied. When you have limited diagnostic equipment, you learn to use all your senses and to notice patterns that instruments might miss. We call it thinking like the system, trying to understand why something might fail under specific conditions. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Lord Commander Thexaler, the Emperor's chief military advisor. The massive draconian warrior's scales were a deep emerald green marked with battle scars from a dozen campaigns. His expression was troubled as he entered the princess's chambers. Your Highness, he said with a respectful bow, your father requires your immediate presence in the War Council chamber. We have received a distress signal from the Kepler mining colony on the Outer Rim. Princess Zara Thyss rose immediately, her diplomatic training taking over. What is the nature of the emergency, Lord Commander? The colony is under attack by unknown forces, Thexaler replied grimly. Their transmissions indicate that conventional weapons are ineffective against the attackers. The colony's defensive systems have been neutralized, and they estimate only hours before complete occupation. As the princess prepared to leave for the emergency council session, she turned to Marcus. Continue with your duties here. I will return as soon as possible. Marcus bowed appropriately, but something in his expression caught the princess's attention. You look concerned, Marcus. Do you have thoughts about this situation? Forgive me, Your Highness, but the description of the attack troubles me. Unknown forces that are immune to conventional weapons and capable of neutralizing advanced defensive systems, it reminds me of scenarios we studied in human military engineering courses. Lord Commander Thexaler's head turned sharply toward Marcus, his expression a mixture of surprise and mild offense. You claim knowledge of military affairs, servant? Marcus bowed respectfully to the commander. Only basic engineering applications, my lord. Human settlements are often vulnerable to attack, so we study various threat scenarios as part of our infrastructure planning. Princess Zara Thyss held up a hand to forestall any further comments from Thexaler. What scenarios does this situation remind you of, Marcus? Your Highness, the combination of immunity to conventional weapons and the ability to disable defensive systems suggests either advanced energy shielding technology or attackers who understand the target systems well enough to exploit specific vulnerabilities. In human defensive planning, we call this an inside knowledge attack. The commander's scales rippled with skepticism. Are you suggesting sabotage from within the colony? Not necessarily sabotage by colonists, Marcus replied carefully. But the attackers might possess detailed technical knowledge of draconian systems. They would need to understand your defensive protocols and weapon frequencies to neutralize them so effectively. Princess Zara Thyss exchanged a meaningful look with Lord Commander Thexaler. The implications of Marcus's observation were significant and disturbing. We should discuss this possibility with the council. Marcus, you will accompany us. Thexaler's expression showed clear disapproval. Your Highness, surely you cannot mean to bring a human servant into a military strategy session. I mean exactly that, the princess replied with authority that brooked no argument. Marcus has already demonstrated valuable analytical abilities. If his insights helped solve my medical crisis, perhaps they can contribute to solving this military one. The War Council chamber was an impressive space designed to accommodate the Empire's largest draconian officials in their full dragon forms. Holographic displays showed real-time data from the distant mining colony, including tactical maps and communication intercepts. Emperor Vexteron presided from a throne carved from a single piece of obsidian, his massive presence dominating the chamber. When Princess Zarati HYSS entered with Marcus in tow, the assembled military commanders and advisors turned to stare at the small human with expressions ranging from curiosity to outright hostility. No servant, much less a member of a species considered technologically inferior, had ever been permitted in a high-level military briefing. "Father," the princess said formally, "I have brought Marcus because he has offered observations about the attack that may be relevant to our planning." Emperor Vexteron's ancient eyes studied Marcus for a moment before nodding slowly. "Very well. Let the human speak his thoughts." Marcus stepped forward, his posture respectful but confident. "Your Majesty, based on the limited information I have heard, this attack pattern suggests that the enemy possesses detailed knowledge of draconian military technology. The speed with which they neutralized the colony's defenses indicates either superior technology or specific countermeasures designed for your systems." Admiral Zefkaran, the Empire's chief naval strategist, snorted dismissively. "Human, you speak of matters far beyond your comprehension. Our defensive systems are the most advanced in the galaxy. No primitive species could possess countermeasures against them." "Respectfully, Admiral," Marcus replied, "I am not suggesting that the attackers are primitive. Quite the opposite. But, in human strategic analysis, when an enemy achieves rapid success against supposedly superior defenses, we look for three possibilities: overwhelming technological superiority, inside knowledge of the defensive systems, or exploitation of unexpected vulnerabilities." The Emperor leaned forward on his throne. "Explain these possibilities in detail, Marcus." Marcus moved closer to the holographic displays, studying the tactical information with surprising competence. First, technological superiority would require weapons and defenses beyond anything previously encountered. Second, inside knowledge could come from captured equipment, defected personnel, or extensive reconnaissance. Third, unexpected vulnerabilities often involve attacking systems in ways they were not designed to handle. He paused, pointing to specific elements in the tactical display. "Your Majesty, the attack pattern shows very precise targeting of critical infrastructure nodes. The enemy struck power generation, communication arrays, and defensive control systems in a specific sequence that maximized disruption. This suggests detailed knowledge of how these systems interact." Admiral Zefkaran examined the display more carefully, her skepticism beginning to waver. "The targeting sequence is indeed sophisticated. But, how would you propose we respond to such an attack?" Marcus studied the holographic representation of the colony's layout and defensive positions. "Admiral, in human defensive doctrine, when facing an enemy with inside knowledge of your systems, you must do something unexpected. Use tactics or technologies that the enemy hasn't studied or prepared for." Lord Commander Thexaler stepped closer to the display. "What kind of unexpected tactics?" "The enemy has clearly prepared countermeasures for standard draconian military responses," Marcus explained. "They expect your ships to approach in standard battle formations using conventional weapons and defensive patterns. What if you approached the problem differently?" "Princess, our ships approach in standard defensive formation and engage using proven tactical doctrine. Which is exactly what the enemy would expect and prepare for," Marcus added quietly. Admiral Zefkaran's scales shifted color as she considered this perspective. "You suggest we abandon proven military doctrine based on the theoretical insights of a human servant?" Emperor Vexteron raised a massive hand for silence. "Admiral, this human's theoretical insights recently solved a medical mystery that our most advanced physicians could not. Perhaps we should consider his perspective before dismissing it entirely." The chamber fell silent as the assembled military leaders contemplated this unprecedented situation. The idea of taking strategic advice from a human was almost incomprehensible, yet Marcus's track record of unconventional problem-solving was undeniable. "Marcus," the Emperor said slowly, "if you were planning this rescue mission with human resources and tactics, how would you approach it?" Marcus took a deep breath, understanding the weight of the question. "Your Majesty, humans would use deception and multiple approaches. We might send obvious military forces on predictable routes to draw the enemy's attention, while smaller, less obvious forces approached from unexpected directions. We would also try to gather more intelligence about the enemy's capabilities and intentions before committing to direct confrontation. Princess Zara THYSS studied the tactical displays with new eyes. Father, what if we combined our advanced technology with human tactical principles? Use our superior capabilities in unexpected ways? Lord Commander Thexaler nodded slowly. It has merit, Your Majesty. The enemy has clearly studied our standard tactics. An unconventional approach might catch them unprepared. Over the next several hours, the War Council developed a modified battle plan that incorporated elements of human tactical doctrine with draconian technological superiority. Instead of a single overwhelming force, they would deploy multiple smaller groups approaching from different vectors. Civilian cargo vessels would be used to mask the approach of special forces units. Traditional military formations would be abandoned in favor of more flexible, adaptive deployment patterns. Marcus found himself serving as an unofficial advisor on human tactical principles, explaining concepts like feints, diversionary attacks, and asymmetric warfare to commanders who had never encountered such approaches. Despite initial skepticism, the draconian military leaders began to see the value in these unconventional strategies. Your human tactics assume fighting against superior enemies, Admiral Zethkaron observed. But our technology surpasses most known species. Why would we need such indirect approaches? Admiral, Marcus replied respectfully, sometimes the greatest strength can become a weakness if your enemies know how to exploit it. If they expect you to rely on technological superiority, they may have prepared specific countermeasures. Unpredictability can be more valuable than raw power. As the planning session continued, Princess Zara THYSS noticed something remarkable happening. The assembled military commanders, initially hostile to Marcus's presence, were beginning to engage with his ideas seriously. His quiet competence and thoughtful observations were gradually earning their respect. Marcus, she said during a brief recess, I am curious about your background. Your knowledge seems unusually comprehensive for a maintenance engineer. Marcus smiled modestly. Your Highness, human education is often broader than specialized. We learn basic principles from many fields because our limited resources require versatility. A maintenance engineer might need to understand power systems, life support, communications, basic medical procedures, and defensive operations all as part of normal duties. The princess considered this explanation thoughtfully. In draconian society, individuals typically specialized in single fields and rarely gained comprehensive knowledge outside their areas of expertise. The human approach of broad-based learning was both practical and intellectually appealing. When the planning session resumed, Emperor Vextaron announced the final tactical plan. The rescue mission would incorporate human-inspired asymmetric tactics with draconian technological capabilities. Multiple approach vectors, deceptive civilian vessel usage, and non-standard formations would be combined with advanced weaponry and defensive systems. Marcus, the Emperor said formally, your insights have contributed significantly to this plan. I am assigning you to accompany Princess Zara THYSS aboard the command vessel to provide ongoing tactical consultation. The announcement sent a ripple of surprise through the assembled commanders. Never before had a human been included in an active draconian military operation. Admiral Zethkaron looked as though she might object, but the Emperor's expression discouraged any protests. Princess Zara THYSS felt a surge of pride and anticipation. Working alongside Marcus on this mission would give her the opportunity to observe his capabilities in a crisis situation. She was beginning to suspect that there was far more to her human servant than his humble position suggested. As the War Council disbanded and preparations began for the rescue mission, Marcus found himself reflecting on the extraordinary turn his life had taken. 3 weeks ago, he had been an unremarkable servant in the princess's household. Now he was serving as a tactical advisor to the most powerful military force in the galaxy. The irony was not lost on him that humanity's perceived weaknesses, their need for unconventional tactics against superior enemies, were now being viewed as potential strengths by their technologically advanced overlords. Perhaps there was more value in human perspectives than the galaxy had previously recognized. The Imperial Dreadnought Sovereign's flame cut through the void toward the Kepler mining colony, its massive hull bristling with the most advanced weapons technology in the known galaxy. Princess Zara THYSS stood on the command bridge, her golden scales catching the light from the tactical displays that surrounded the command center. Beside her, Marcus observed the controlled chaos of a military vessel preparing for battle with quiet fascination. The bridge was a marvel of draconian engineering, with multiple levels connected by crystalline ramps and floating platforms that adjusted automatically to accommodate officers in various forms. Holographic displays showed real-time sensor data, fleet positions, and strategic assessments. The scale of the operation was far beyond anything Marcus had experienced, yet he found the underlying principles surprisingly familiar. Admiral Zeth Karan approached the central command platform where Princess Zarati HYSS and Marcus were reviewing the final tactical arrangements. Her emerald scales carried the subtle patterns that indicated both high rank and considerable combat experience. Despite her initial skepticism about human involvement in military planning, she had come to respect Marcus's analytical abilities during the voyage. "Your Highness," the Admiral reported, "all fleet elements are in position according to the modified battle plan. The diversionary force will begin their approach in 30 minutes, followed by the civilian cargo vessels carrying our special operations teams. The main battle group will hold position until we can assess the enemy's response to our initial moves." Princess Zarati HYSS studied the tactical display, noting the unconventional deployment patterns that Marcus had suggested. Instead of the traditional concentrated formation that maximized firepower, their forces were spread across multiple approach vectors in a pattern that emphasized flexibility and deception. "What is the status of communications with the colony?" she asked. "Sporadic contact only," Admiral Zeth Karan replied grimly. "The enemy appears to be jamming most transmission frequencies, but we are receiving brief status updates every few hours. The colonists are still holding defensive positions in the asteroid field surrounding the enemy base was a maze of floating rock and ice, some chunks as large as small moons." Princess Zarati HYSS watched from the bridge of her Strike Force flagship as they navigated through the treacherous terrain toward their target. The enemy had chosen their hiding place well. The dense asteroid field would mask their presence from most sensors while providing natural defensive barriers. Marcus stood beside the tactical display, studying the enemy base's layout as revealed by their reconnaissance probes. The facility was enormous, clearly designed to support extended military campaigns across multiple star systems. Manufacturing plants, supply depots, and repair facilities were built into the larger asteroids, connected by a network of energy bridges and transport tubes. "The central command structure appears to be located here," Marcus pointed to a massive asteroid at the center of the complex. "If we can destroy that facility, their ability to coordinate the ambush at the colony should be severely compromised." Captain Mordax, the Strike Force commander, studied the tactical analysis with professional interest. His battle-scarred scale spoke of decades of combat experience across the galaxy's frontier regions. "The approach will be difficult. They have defensive platforms positioned throughout the asteroid field, and our ships will be vulnerable while navigating the narrow passages." "What about using the asteroids themselves as cover?" Marcus suggested. "Human vessels often use environmental features to mask their approach. If we can move through the field without presenting clear targets, we might reach the central facility before they can mount an effective defense." Princess Zarati HYSS examined the three-dimensional tactical display, noting the complex network of possible approach routes. "Our ships are larger and less maneuverable than human vessels. Can we successfully navigate such restricted passages?" "Your Highness," Captain Mordax replied, "it would be extremely challenging, but our pilots are among the best in the Empire. With careful coordination, it might be possible." Marcus highlighted several potential routes on the display. "The key is simultaneous approach from multiple directions. If we spread our forces across 3 or 4 different paths, the enemy cannot concentrate their defenses effectively. Some of our ships will take damage, but others should reach their targets." As they refined their approach strategy, communications from Admiral Zeth Karan's diversionary force at the colony began arriving. The main fleet had engaged the enemy ambush force and was drawing heavy fire, exactly as planned. The enemy was fully committed to the colony battle, believing their trap had succeeded. "Perfect timing," Princess Zarati HYSS observed. "Their attention is completely focused on the main engagement. This is our opportunity to strike before they realize what's happening." The strike force divided into 4 separate groups, each taking a different route through the asteroid field toward the central command facility. Marcus found himself aboard the Princess's flagship as it began threading its way between massive chunks of rock and ice. The navigation was incredibly precise, with barely meters of clearance on either side. "Human vessels regularly operate in such confined spaces?" Captain Mordax asked as they squeezed through a particularly narrow passage. Our mining operations and asteroid colonies require this kind of maneuvering, Marcus replied. When you have limited space and resources, you learn to work in tight quarters. Human pilots train extensively for navigation in debris fields and asteroid belts. The first sign of enemy awareness came when defensive platforms in the outer asteroid field began powering up their weapons systems. Automated defense turrets emerged from concealed positions, tracking the approaching Draconian ships with targeting beams. They know we're here, Captain Mordax announced. All units engage defensive targets and continue toward primary objectives. The battle erupted across multiple fronts as the four strike groups encountered increasing resistance while pushing deeper into the asteroid field. Draconian ships used their superior firepower to blast through defensive positions while using the asteroids themselves as shields against return fire. The tactic that Marcus had suggested was proving effective. The enemy could not concentrate their defenses against attacks coming from multiple directions simultaneously. Strike Group 2 has reached the manufacturing complex, came a report from Captain Veltana's force. Beginning bombardment of production facilities. Strike Group 4 is engaging the supply depot asteroid, reported another commander. Heavy resistance, but we're making progress. Princess Zarati HYSS focused on their own objective, the Central Command asteroid that housed the enemy's coordination facilities. As they approached the massive rock, defensive systems that had been hidden within its surface began revealing themselves. Weapons platforms, shield generators, and communications arrays emerged from concealed positions. Impressive engineering, Marcus observed, studying the defensive installations. They've essentially turned this entire asteroid into a fortress. But notice how the defensive positions are arranged, they're optimized for attacks from standard approach vectors. You see a vulnerability? The princess asked. Marcus pointed to a section of the asteroid that appeared less heavily defended. Their weapons placement assumes attackers will approach from the plane of the asteroid belt, following normal orbital mechanics. But if we could attack from above or below that plane, we might avoid their primary defensive fire. Captain Mordax consulted his navigation systems. Changing our approach angle at this point would be extremely difficult. We'd have to break away from the asteroid cover and expose ourselves to defensive fire. What if we don't all change course? Marcus suggested. Keep most of our ships on the current approach to draw their defensive fire, while a smaller force circles around to attack from the blind spot. Princess Zarati HYSS made the tactical decision immediately. Captain, detach 2 of our escort destroyers for a flanking maneuver. The rest of us will continue the direct approach and keep their attention focused. As the battle plan developed, Marcus found himself increasingly impressed by the flexibility and skill of the Draconian military. Despite their traditional preference for overwhelming direct assault, they were adapting to unconventional tactics with remarkable speed and effectiveness. The flanking destroyers began their wide circling maneuver while the main force pressed forward through increasingly heavy defensive fire. The enemy's weapons were powerful and accurate, but their fixed positions limited their ability to track targets moving in unexpected patterns. Direct hit on Target 7, reported one of the destroyer captains. Defensive platform destroyed. Target 12 is down, came another report. Their shield generators are taking heavy damage. The Princess's flagship pushed through the defensive perimeter, its heavy armor absorbing hits from multiple weapons platforms while returning devastating fire. The Draconian ship's superior firepower was telling enemy defensive positions were being systematically eliminated despite their strong positions. Ma'am, the communications officer announced, we're receiving a priority transmission from Admiral Zeth Karan at the colony. Put it through, the princess ordered. Admiral Zeth Karan's image appeared on the command display, showing the main bridge of her flagship during active combat. Explosions and weapon fire were visible in the background. Your Highness, the enemy is beginning to show signs of coordination breakdown. Their tactical responses are becoming disorganized, suggesting that our attack on their command structure is having effect. Excellent news, Admiral. We're making progress against their central facility, but the defenses are stronger than anticipated. How much longer can you maintain the diversionary engagement? We can hold their attention for another hour, perhaps 2, the Admiral replied. But our casualties are mounting. The sooner you can eliminate their command capability, the better. As the transmission ended, Marcus studied the tactical situation with growing concern. Their attack was succeeding, but slowly. The enemy's command facility was heavily defended and would require sustained bombardment to eliminate completely. Time was becoming a critical factor. Captain Mordax, Marcus said carefully, what would happen if we concentrated our fire on the asteroid's structural weak points rather than the defensive installations? The captain consulted his engineering displays. Are you suggesting we attempt to fracture the asteroid itself? Exactly. Instead of trying to destroy each defensive platform individually, we crack the rock they're built on. It would require precise targeting of geological stress points, but the result would be much more devastating than conventional bombardment. Princess Zara THYSS studied the asteroid's composition data. Can our weapons achieve such precision while under defensive fire? Human mining operations use similar techniques to break up large asteroids, Marcus explained. The key is identifying the natural fracture lines in the rock and applying force at exactly the right points. It requires detailed geological analysis, but the results can be spectacular. Captain Mordax accessed the ship's geological scanning systems, technologies normally used for planetary surveys rather than combat operations. The central asteroid does show significant internal stress patterns. If we could place precisely targeted shots at these locations, the entire command facility would collapse when the asteroid fractures, Marcus finished. Instead of hours of bombardment, we could eliminate the target in minutes. The princess made another command decision. Implement the geological attack plan. All units, target the stress points identified by our geological scanners. Coordinate your fire for maximum structural impact. The change in tactics caught the enemy defenders completely off guard. Instead of attacking their weapons platforms and shields, the Draconian ships began targeting seemingly random points on the asteroid's surface. The defensive AI systems couldn't understand why the attackers were ignoring obvious military targets in favor of bare rock. First stress point breached, reported the flagship's weapons officer. Significant structural damage detected. Second stress point hit. The asteroid is beginning to show fracture propagation. Marcus watched the geological displays with satisfaction as his analysis proved correct. The massive asteroid was beginning to crack along its natural fault lines, the carefully calculated weapon strikes triggering a cascade of structural failures. Third stress point destroyed. Major fracture detected across the command section. The enemy's defensive fire was becoming erratic as the weapons platforms shifted and tilted with the fracturing rock. Communications arrays collapsed as their supporting structures failed. The fortress asteroid that had seemed impregnable was tearing itself apart from within. All targets achieved, Captain Mordax announced with satisfaction. The command facility is completely destroyed. As the central asteroid split into multiple fragments, taking the enemy's command structure with it, communications from Admiral Zethkaran's force brought confirmation of the plan's success. Your Highness, the Admiral reported, enemy coordination has collapsed completely. Their ships are operating independently without central command. We're rolling up their forces systematically. Princess Zara THYSS felt a surge of triumph and relief. The unconventional tactics that Marcus had suggested had achieved a decisive victory against what should have been an impregnable enemy stronghold. The combination of human tactical thinking and draconian technological superiority had proved devastatingly effective. Marcus, she said as the strike force regrouped for the return journey, once again your insights have made the difference between victory and defeat. How do you continue to see solutions that our most experienced military minds miss? Marcus smiled modestly. Your Highness, humans have learned to think creatively because we're usually outgunned and outnumbered. We look for unexpected approaches because conventional tactics would result in our destruction. Sometimes that perspective can be valuable even when you possess superior technology. Captain Mordax approached them with an expression of professional respect. With your Highness's permission, I would like to recommend that human tactical principles be incorporated into our military academy curriculum. The approaches demonstrated in this operation could prove invaluable in future conflicts. As they departed the shattered remains of the enemy base, Princess Zara THYSS found herself contemplating the broader implications of what had occurred. Marcus's contributions to both her medical crisis and this military victory suggested that her people might have seriously underestimated human capabilities. Marcus, she said thoughtfully, I am beginning to suspect that there is much more to your background than you have revealed. Your knowledge seems remarkably comprehensive for a simple maintenance engineer. Marcus met her gaze steadily.
Your Highness, I have been completely honest about my background.
But, perhaps human education and experience are broader than your people have assumed. When you face constant challenges with limited resources, you learn to be adaptable and observant. The princess nodded, but her expression suggested that she was not entirely satisfied with this explanation. There were depths to Marcus that remained unexplored, capabilities that seemed to exceed what his modest background would suggest. As they rendezvoused with Admiral Zethkaron's victorious main fleet, the rescued colonists were already being evacuated from the mining facility. The operation had succeeded beyond their most optimistic projections, achieving decisive victory while minimizing casualties. Your Highness, Admiral Zethkaron reported, the colony is secure, the enemy forces have been eliminated or scattered, and we've captured significant intelligence about their broader operations.
This victory will have strategic implications across the entire sector.
Princess Zara-THYSS accepted the Admiral's report with satisfaction, but her attention remained partially focused on Marcus. The quiet human who had entered her service as a simple servant was revealing himself to be far more complex and capable than anyone had imagined. The return journey to the imperial capital would provide opportunities to explore these mysteries further. The victory celebration in the imperial capital was magnificent, with crystal spires illuminated in patterns of gold and crimson that could be seen from orbit. Citizens throughout the empire had learned of the successful rescue mission and the innovative tactics that had achieved such decisive results. For the first time in draconian military history, human strategic concepts had been officially credited with a major victory. Princess Zara-THYSS stood on the balcony of her restored chambers, watching the celebration below while contemplating the extraordinary events of recent weeks. Her health had been completely restored, the mining colony had been saved, and an enemy threat had been eliminated. All of these successes could be traced to the insights of a single human servant who continued to surprise her with his capabilities. Marcus approached with her evening correspondence, his movements as quiet and efficient as always. Despite his recent elevation to unofficial tactical advisor, he continued to perform his duties as her personal servant with unchanged dedication. Your Highness, he said, offering her the data tablets containing reports from across the Empire, Emperor Vextaron requests your presence in the throne chamber tomorrow morning.
There is to be a formal recognition ceremony for the participants in the rescue operation.
Princess Zara-THYSS accepted the correspondence but continued to study Marcus's expression.
And what recognition do you expect to receive, Marcus?
Your contributions were essential to our success.
Marcus smiled modestly. Your Highness, I require no recognition. Serving you and the Empire has been honor enough.
The princess set aside the tablets and turned to face him fully. That is precisely the kind of response that convinces me there is more to your story than you have shared. Most beings would seek advancement and reward for such achievements.
Your consistent humility suggests either extraordinary character or hidden motivations.
Marcus met her gaze steadily, understanding that this conversation had been inevitable.
What would your Highness like to know?
The truth, she replied simply.
Who are you really, Marcus-chan?
Marcus was quiet for a long moment, considering how to respond.
The time for complete honesty had clearly arrived, though he was uncertain how the princess would react to the full truth about his background.
Your Highness, he began carefully, I have never lied to you about my past, but I have not told you everything.
It is true that I worked as a maintenance engineer on human space stations. It is also true that my education was broad rather than specialized. What I have not mentioned is that my engineering work was often in support of human military operations. Princess Zara-THYSS leaned forward with interest. Explain.
Human territories are frequently threatened by various hostile forces, pirates, aggressive alien species, territorial disputes with neighboring powers. Our defensive installations require constant maintenance and upgrading to remain effective against superior enemies. I became skilled at analyzing enemy capabilities and developing countermeasures using limited resources. You were a military engineer, the princess said, understanding beginning to dawn in her expression.
Among other things, Marcus confirmed. Humans cannot afford the luxury of narrow specialization when facing existential threats.
I learned tactical analysis, systems engineering, emergency medicine, diplomatic protocols, and resource management because survival often depended on adaptability. The princess studied his face intently, seeing him clearly for the first time.
And why did you accept assignment as a servant in my household? surely your capabilities would be better utilized in a more significant role. Marcus smiled ruefully.
Your Highness, when the diplomatic exchange program was announced, I volunteered specifically to serve in your household. Human intelligence had identified you as one of the most influential figures in the Empire and a potential ally for improving human-draconian relations. You are a spy, Princess Zarati said, though her tone carried more curiosity than accusation. I prefer the term diplomatic observer, Marcus replied. My mission was to learn about draconian society and culture, identify opportunities for cooperation, and demonstrate human capabilities in subtle ways. I never expected to become involved in medical emergencies or military operations.
The princess began to laugh, a sound of genuine amusement rather than mockery.
So the humble human servant who solved impossible problems and contributed to military victory was actually a carefully placed intelligence operative.
The irony is remarkable.
Your Highness, Marcus said carefully, I hope this revelation does not affect our working relationship. Despite my original mission, my loyalty to you and your well-being has become entirely genuine. Princess Zarati studied his expression for several long moments, evaluating his sincerity and considering the implications of his admission. Marcus, your actions over these past weeks have demonstrated your character more clearly than any words could. You had opportunities to gather intelligence or advance human interests at the Empire's expense, yet you consistently acted in our benefit. Because it was the right thing to do, Marcus replied simply. And because I have come to respect and care for you personally, beyond any political considerations. The princess felt warmth spreading through her chest at his words. The quiet human who had saved her life and helped achieve military victory was looking at her with an expression that suggested his feelings had evolved far beyond professional duty or political mission. Marcus, she said softly, are you saying that your feelings toward me have become personal? Marcus hesitated, understanding the momentous nature of what he was about to admit. Your Highness, I know that any romantic attachment between us would be impossible due to the differences in our species and social positions. But, yes, my feelings for you have become deeply personal. Working closely with you, seeing your intelligence and compassion, sharing these extraordinary experiences. I have developed emotions that go far beyond professional respect. Princess Zarati felt her heart racing as she processed his admission. The idea of romantic feelings between a draconian princess and a human servant was unprecedented in the Empire's history. Yet she could not deny that her own feelings toward Marcus had evolved similarly. The impossibility you speak of, she said carefully, exists primarily in the assumptions of others rather than in any natural law. Two intelligent beings who have shared extraordinary experiences and developed mutual respect and affection, perhaps the barriers are not as insurmountable as they appear. Marcus looked surprised by her response. Your Highness, surely you cannot seriously consider I can and I am, the princess interrupted gently. Marcus, you have shown me that assumptions about species capabilities and limitations are often incorrect. Perhaps assumptions about social barriers are equally flawed. The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Emperor Vexteron himself, his massive presence filling the chamber's doorway. Both Marcus and the princess turned in surprise. The emperor rarely visited his daughter's private chambers without formal announcement. Father, Princess Zarati said, quickly composing herself. This is unexpected. The emperor's ancient eyes moved between his daughter and Marcus, clearly noting the intimate nature of the conversation he had interrupted. I came to discuss tomorrow's ceremony and to speak privately with Marcus about his future in the Empire. Marcus bowed deeply, uncertain whether his confession to the princess had somehow been overheard or anticipated. Your Majesty, I am at your service. Emperor Vexteron gestured for both of them to be seated, then settled his massive form in the chamber's largest chair. Marcus, your contributions to recent events have not gone unnoticed throughout the Empire. Admiral Zefkaran has formally recommended you for appointment to the Imperial Military Academy as an instructor in unconventional tactics. Dr. Velamara has requested your assistance in developing new diagnostic protocols that combine advanced technology with observational methods. Marcus listened with growing amazement as the Emperor continued. Furthermore, several planetary governors have inquired about your availability as a strategic consultant. Your reputation has spread quickly through official channels. Your Majesty, Marcus replied carefully, I am honored by these opportunities, but my primary loyalty remains to Princess Zarati. I would not wish to leave her service. The Emperor's expression showed what might have been approval.
An admirable sentiment. However, the positions being offered would allow you to maintain your association with my daughter while contributing to the Empire on a much broader scale. Princess Zarati HYSS intervened. Father, before any decisions are made about Marcus's future, there is something you should know. He has just revealed that his original assignment to our household was part of a human diplomatic intelligence mission. Emperor Vextaron's massive head turned toward Marcus, his expression unreadable. Explain. Marcus straightened, meeting the Emperor's gaze directly. Your Majesty, I was sent to observe Draconian society and identify opportunities for improved relations between our peoples. My background in military engineering and tactical analysis was considered relevant for understanding Imperial capabilities and intentions. And what have you concluded from your observations? The Emperor asked. That the Empire is far more complex and sophisticated than human leadership assumed, Marcus replied honestly. Your people possess not only advanced technology but also wisdom, honor, and genuine concern for the welfare of your citizens. Cooperation rather than conflict would benefit both our peoples enormously. Emperor Vextaron was quiet for several long moments, considering Marcus's words. And what do you believe your human leaders would think of your recommendation for cooperation? Marcus smiled ruefully. Your Majesty, I believe my superiors will be very interested in the detailed reports I will provide about Draconian capabilities and intentions. The success of recent operations, achieved through human-Draconian cooperation, will demonstrate the potential benefits of alliance rather than mere coexistence. An alliance, the Emperor mused. Between the Empire and human territories. Such an arrangement would require trust and mutual respect between our peoples, which could best be built through continued cooperation on projects like the recent rescue operation, Princess Zarati HYSS added. Marcus has shown that human perspectives can complement our capabilities in unexpected ways. The Emperor studied his daughter's expression, noting the warmth with which she spoke of Marcus and the careful attention she paid to his responses. Zarati HYSS, your regard for this human seems quite comprehensive. The princess met her father's gaze steadily. Father, Marcus has saved my life, contributed to our military success, and proven his loyalty beyond any reasonable doubt. My regard for him is indeed comprehensive. Emperor Vextaron's ancient eyes moved between his daughter and Marcus again, clearly recognizing the emotional undercurrents in their interaction. I see. And, Marcus, how would you characterize your feelings toward my daughter? Marcus understood that this moment would determine not only his own future but, potentially the future of human-Draconian relations. Your Majesty, Princess Zarati HYSS has earned my deepest respect, loyalty, and affection. I would be honored to serve her and the Empire in whatever capacity would be most beneficial. The Emperor was quiet for a very long time, considering implications that extended far beyond the personal feelings of his daughter and a human servant. The success of their recent cooperation had demonstrated possibilities that could reshape interstellar relations. The attachment that had clearly developed between Zarati HYSS and Marcus could either exemplify that cooperation or complicate it enormously. Tomorrow, Emperor Vextaron finally announced Marcus will be formally appointed as strategic advisor to the Imperial Council with permanent attachment to Princess Zarati HYSS's staff. This position will allow him to contribute to imperial policy while maintaining his association with my daughter. Both Marcus and the princess looked surprised by this unexpected announcement. The position the Emperor described would make Marcus one of the highest-ranking non-Draconians in the Empire's history. Furthermore, the Emperor continued, I am appointing Princess Zarati HYSS as Imperial Ambassador for Human Relations. She will be responsible for developing formal alliance negotiations with human territorial governments. Princess Zarati HYSS realized the brilliance of her father's decision. By formalizing both her relationship with Marcus and their roles in human-Draconian relations, he was creating a framework that could accommodate their personal attachment while serving broader political purposes. Thank you, Father, she said with genuine gratitude. I believe this arrangement will benefit everyone involved. As Emperor Vextaron departed, leaving Marcus and the princess alone again, they looked at each other with new understanding of their transformed circumstances. So, Princess Zarati HYSS said with a smile, Strategic Advisor Marcus Chen, what do you think our first diplomatic initiative should be? Marcus smiled back, moving closer to where she stood. Your Highness, I think our first initiative should be demonstrating that meaningful cooperation between our peoples is not only possible but incredibly powerful. We have already proven that human and draconian capabilities complement each other perfectly.
And, on a personal level, she asked softly. Marcus reached out to gently take her hand, a gesture that would have been unthinkable weeks earlier. On a personal level, I think we should explore the possibilities that have developed between us, while always remembering that our individual happiness is connected to the broader success of our people's alliance. Princess Zara Thys squeezed his hand gently, looking out at the celebration continuing in the capital city below.
Marcus, I believe we are about to embark on the most interesting diplomatic mission in galactic history.
Together, Marcus agreed, understanding that their personal journey and their political mission had become inseparably intertwined. As they stood together on the balcony, watching the lights of celebration spread across the city, both of them understood that they had achieved something unprecedented. The humble human servant and the dragon princess had not only saved lives and won battles, but had also opened new possibilities for cooperation between their peoples. The future stretched ahead of them, full of challenges and opportunities that neither could have imagined when Marcus first entered her service. But they would face that future together, as partners in both love and diplomacy, proving that the most unlikely alliances could become the strongest foundations for lasting peace. The story of the human who looked beneath the dragon princess's bed and found answers that no one else could see had become the beginning of a new chapter in galactic history. Sometimes the smallest observations could lead to the greatest transformations, and sometimes the most unlikely love could bridge the vastest differences between worlds.